What you're going to hear me share in my brief remarks are some themes very consistent with our colleague up north in Yellowstone. Many of you know what I'm about to repeat by way of our legislative mandate, but it kind of sets the content and context for my answers to the questions that have been posed. The legislative mandate of the National Park Service is simple and yet complex: to conserve the scenery and the natural and historic objects and the wildlife therein, and to provide for the enjoyment of the same in such manner and by such means as will leave them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. That's what Dan Week and I get paid to do, is to ensure that as best as we can with very capable staff, volunteers in gateway communities and the global community, that we get that done. So for over 100 years, national park managers have been trying to achieve these interests by attracting visitors in our early days and now having to deal with record-breaking numbers current day from around the world. So for Grand Teton National Park, the answer to the first question is, what is the biggest challenge facing my jurisdiction? The answer: changing visitor dynamics. In fact, did you see the headlines of today's paper? And I quote, "Teton Yellowstone visitors broke records in 2015. In fact, my distinguished colleague from Yellowstone said, last year's visitation tested the capacity of Yellowstone National Park," end quote. Here are the facts. The changing visitor demographics produced more visitation. The numbers are: Grand Teton welcomed 4.6 million total visitors in 2015. That's an 8.2% increase from the 4.3 million that we saw in 2014. A 12.9% increase from 2013, and an 18.6% increase from 2012, just 3 years ago, when we welcomed 3.9 million visitors. Front country visitor areas are and or near capacity. This level of visitation means impacts to park resources, the visitor experience, and clearly park facilities. Another sub-theme: increased visitation during our shoulder season. The 3 months with the biggest increases from 2014 to 2015 were in this order: the month of September, the month of October, and May. We saw an 18% increase in September visitation from last year, a 12% increase in October visitation. Another sub-theme: fewer staff to serve this growing visitor demographic. This is extremely challenging because our visitor workforce is transitioning to a much smaller winter workforce during the shoulder season. And frankly, we do not have the ability to significantly extend the length of our seasonal workforce due to both the lack of funds and our need to close housing units that are not winterized. The park's operating budget has declined 9% since 2009 when you adjust for inflation. However, there's great news that recent appropriations and frankly increased fee revenues will provide needed support and a helping hand. Still, we had 18% fewer staff this summer compared to 2010. And clearly a theme this morning: housing. Our permanent and seasonal workforce is a persistent struggle and challenge. I've been told that I'm the largest provider of housing in the entire Teton County. And even with that said, it's not enough. Another sub-theme to the challenge: increased international visitation. Although we don't keep stats on this, clearly anecdotally, we're seeing many more visitors from Asia and India. And with that brings some additional challenges due to language and cultural differences and barriers. And frankly, due to external marketing campaigns, as my colleagues mentioned, we will continue to see these demographic international communities targeted, as well as other international audiences in the foreseeable future. another sub-theme to that challenge are the inherent impacts to park resources, staff, facilities, and the visitor experience itself. Grand Teton National Park rangers, paramedics, and emergency medical technicians responded to 10% more calls for assistance compared to 2014. In 1 year, we had 66 search and rescues, tragically with 6 fatalities, with fewer staff to achieve those objectives. Youth experience it personally. Parking at some of our very popular destinations at Jenny Lake, Lupin Meadows, and Stream Lake very often exceeded the very capacity of that footprint, thereby frustrating park visitors and impacting the park experience. So when you deal with the challenges, our visitation realities are clearly evident. Between international marketing campaigns, the NPS Centennial, the agency's Find Your Park campaign, the National Geographic issue, this spring visitation and into the summer and into the fall will continue. And frankly, my friends, it is not unreasonable to think that Grand Teton National Park's visitation could see 5 million visitors in 2016, coming to a neighborhood near you. Keep that in mind. So the second question, what is the single biggest opportunity facing your jurisdiction? You guessed it, changing visitor demographics and dynamics. More visitors means more opportunities, frankly, to reach new and diverse audiences. Telling the park's many stories helps to encourage a new generation of park supporters, visitors, and advocates. And through park experiences, it also encourages more people to be exposed and engaged in conservation and the impacts of climate change in their own communities and around the country. Bless you. And the third question that was posed, how can the community help you address your biggest challenge? Changing visitor demographics and dynamics. Volunteer. Residents of our gateway communities are extremely passionate, knowledgeable, and know Grand Teton National Park. So why don't you join our wildlife brigades and help us to support the many youth and Latino initiatives that we have ongoing at Grand Teton. Work with us on our workforce housing interest. Let's consider how we can engage and maximize our mutual capacities. And let's leverage that as well. Help us to recognize that the shoulder season is indeed problematic for us, as we do not have staff or facilities open in September and October. Consider that in marketing and when we engage tourism and visitor communities. Let's work together to find potential mitigation options to address everything from traffic interest to the impacts of our gateway community's quality of life, assess potential transportation and transit options, and maximize a safe and memorable visitor experience for all who come to enjoy what you and I benefit from in this community, our respective national parks and federal public lands. So in closing, I'll leave you with three thoughts. My dear friends, how can we continue to welcome the world to our very special part of the ecosystem? How can we preserve, protect, and maintain the resources for which we are all entrusted? All of us have that duty and responsibility to protect what we have been given as part of our national birthright. And how can we effectively engage current and future generations as well as diverse communities and audiences? In closing, I am extremely confident that we can and will achieve these collective interests. Have a good day.